Caitlin Dickerson is a reporter for the New York Times. Since 1851, the New York Times has published thousands of obituaries. The vast majority of them chronicled the lives of mostly white men. Even in the past 2 years, only about 20% of them were about women. Overlooked is a project to write the stories of women who never got obituaries in the New York Times, but should have. And Caitlin is here now to tell us more about this project. It is so sorely needed and really fascinating when you delve into the lives of these women who, as we were saying off camera, I was telling you, Ida B. Wells, the woman you wrote about, seems to have been from 2018, but in actuality, she was born in 1862. Tell me about Ida B. Wells. Why did you want to write her obituary?
Well, I was first drawn to Ida B. Wells. I knew the basics. She was a black female investigative reporter. So am I. And I knew that she was really courageous and that she went up against forces much more powerful than herself. But when I really dug into her story, I mean, the details are so incredible that, like you said, it's as if she was transported from an earlier time. She's born a slave. At 16 years old, her parents die and she takes over, taking care of 6 of her siblings. At 21 is the first time that she organizes an economic boycott. This is a strategy that, as you know, was repurposed during the 1960s civil rights movement. And very infrequently do you ever hear Ida B. Wells credited with that work, all the way down to the last years of her life when she becomes passionate about mass incarceration, an issue that we're talking about today, and organizes against that until she dies.
It really is almost eerie to hear about the things that she was writing about back then with such passion. Tell us a little bit more about who else is featured in Overlooked.
In Overlooked, we have Sylvia Plath, the author. We have Diane Arbus. The list goes on. We've got photographers, we've got writers, we've got scientists. We've got more than 100 people who we're featuring right out of the gate. And we're also encouraging readers to please let us know who else you think that we've missed. Women, but also men of color. We want to address these inequities over time.
And how did you get involved in this project, Caitlin?
Oh, I think that, it was sort of chatter around the building. It was a project that, like I said, I naturally gravitated toward and that they thought of me for. And they sent me sort of a list of names, and Ida's just jumped off of the page. And so I decided to write about her. But it's great. I mean, it's sort of an all-hands-on-deck project that everybody at the Times is really excited about.
At the outset of the piece, Overlooked, there's a very sort of frank kind of admission on the part of the New York Times that, for whatever reason, these women who were very deserving of having their obituaries in the paper didn't have their obituaries published in the paper, and so that is really why they're doing this. But why is it that you think these women were in fact overlooked?
I think that, the New York Times is the paper of record. It has always, to a certain extent, reflected the culture of the moment. And so when we talk about Ida B. Wells, for example, born in the 1860s, we're talking about a moment when, we didn't, as a general culture, pay attention to African Americans, especially African American women. And so you see that in the paper. In fact, not only did we not write an obituary for her, but you also can read criticism of her in the newspaper for being too bold, for being too sort of tactless in the way that she spoke and in the issues that she went after. And so, we're acknowledging now that the New York Times was, quite honestly, part of the problem and trying to rectify it.
Well, the project launched on International Women's Day, as we mentioned, and there are 15 new obituaries. You mentioned, how is this collection expected to grow? You're soliciting suggestions from people who are reading these.
Like I said, I think, everybody in the building is eager to get on board, and so I think this is going to be a rolling project that people in the midst of covering the news are going to be writing obituaries on the side to continue to feed this body of work. And the response today we've seen has been incredible. I mean, it just shows that even in this moment of really stunning news, like the news that people just heard about North Korea, that still we really care about these issues of gender and race and equality.
And so is there someone else on your list that's next, Caitlin, that you personally would like to profile and write an obituary for?
Oh, who I want to write about next? I have to see who's left. Henrietta Lacks, who was a really important figure whose cells were used to sort of understand the human genome. She was the second person who I really wanted to write about, but I had to choose one this time around. But I'll be looking for my next target, absolutely.
Henrietta Lacks, if people don't know, there's a book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot, and Oprah did a movie about an extraordinary story, an extraordinary woman. Caitlin Dickerson from the New York Times. Always great to see you. Thanks so much, Caitlin.
Thanks for having me.